Hello everyone and welcome to another programming video. For this video I'm going to go over the commonly used problem in interviews known as FizzBuzz. It's a relatively simple problem, however it's used as a sort of screening test to make sure that candidates have at least some foundational knowledge of programming. I read an article a little while ago that was rather interesting because it was stating that something like 90 out of 100 interviewers for a programming job couldn't solve FizzBuzz, and FizzBuzz is considered to be a pretty simple problem. Now, if you're just starting off programming, it can seem rather complex, especially if you don't know the syntax or have any idea of how to go about breaking down a problem. So for this problem, I'm going to start from scratch and try to go over how to break it down and all of the different components that are necessary to arrive at a workable solution. So for this solution, it's going to be in Ruby, and let's take a look and see how we do. All right, so far all that I have listed on here, let me make sure I got this right. Let me switch over. Is I just have like the general statement. So write a program that prints the numbers from 1 to 100. For multiples of 3, print fizz. For multiples of 5, print buzz. If the number is a multiple of both 3 and 5, print fizz buzz. I guess sometimes when the problem is given, you don't necessarily have to do the portion of fizz and buzz together for multiples of both 3 and 5, but I just added that to this problem. So I should probably go ahead and have some examples. So basically what's going to be output or the goal is to have, so when you have all these numbers from 1 to 100, let's see here. All right, so it'd be like 1, 2, then when we get to 3, 3 is a multiple of 3. So I'm going to have to provide a definition for this. But it needs to print fizz, and then it would do 4. And for 5, it would be buzz because 5 is a multiple of 5. And then we would go 6 and on. And then when we get to like 15, it would actually output fizz buzz because 15 or 3 and 5 are both multiples of 15. So what is a multiple and all that stuff, that's something I'm going to have to explain as well. Okay, so for this problem here, we have, well, actually, let me just double check, make sure everything is visible. All right, we're good, we're good. Okay, so first things first, we kind of have the problem, we know what we're going to do. What I like to do is when I'm giving a bunch of text like this, I like to take the problem and break it down vertically, just so I have all the different components of the problem separated. Because I think I'm a pretty visual learner. And so this helps me just keep track of all the different components that are required in terms of solving the problem and helps me kind of take a step back and just see what I have to do for each portion. And usually when I do something like that too, I like to just copy it so that way if I make a mistake, it's not going to affect the original one. I'll paste this down here. And you might have remembered from another video where I've done a PDAC approach. That's just a general problem solving approach that I've learned. And it's something that anybody can do. But basically what we're going to do is have our problem. We're going to come up with some examples, which I have down below. We're going to have our data structure. In this case, most likely going to be an array. Then you have your algorithm. Your algorithm is closely related to your data structure, so that's why they're generally right next to each other. And then we have code here. And I think I'm going to go ahead and call this, I'm not sure if I'm going to make this a method or not. If I was going to make it a method, I would just call it FizzBuzz, but I'll decide on that when I get down to it. All right, so we have our problem, and I'm going to split this down so we have one sentence there, one sentence there, and one sentence there. I just think that's a little bit easier to kind of take in and look at and see what you're dealing with in terms of the problem. Because sometimes if you get a word problem and has a bunch of text smashed together, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So if you're starting off, just take it slow and just try to uh, think about the problem and break it down. And that was really difficult for me because I'm a very high level. By high level, I mean like abstractly high. Like I think of a 50,000 foot level kind of deal, which isn't always very useful for programming, or at least learning to program. Now that I've gotten into a little bit of object-oriented programming, I can see that being a little more useful because you got to see how everything is going to interconnect, but it's been a hell of a journey, that I can assure you. All right, so we're going to write a program that prints the numbers from 1 to 100. All right, so I have the multiples here. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and break this down a little bit. So we're going to write a program that prints the numbers from 1 to 100. So that's like the first part of our problem, which is, we can understand that. Then we're going to want to, for multiples of 3, print fizz. Now this is going to lead me to a question. Would probably be in a section known as problem domain. The problem domain is a section of your problem that you may not be sure of. So if you were giving a word problem that's like a story or something like that, and you heard a term, you would have to figure out what that term is. I guess technically in this problem, a multiple might be considered part of the problem domain because maybe you don't know what a multiple is. Basically, a multiple is a number that is evenly divisible into another number. So let's see here. I'll write this right here. Problem domain. What is a multiple? What is the definition of a multiple? A multiple is a number that is evenly divided. I'm pretty sure that's an accurate answer. I'll illustrate it with a modulo, or the modulus, however you say it, into another number. So if we have 12 modulo 3, we get 0. And the reason we get 0 is because 3 is evenly divisible into 12. In other words, there isn't any remainder. And if we had 15 modulo 5, it would be 0. But then if we had 15 modulo 3, that's 0. And if we had 15 modulo 5, as you can see, that's 0 also. So that's where our FizzBuzz section is going to come in. So we need to write a program that prints the numbers from 1 to 100. And then for multiples of 3, we print fizz. I might make this a little lower. For multiples of 5, make sure I write that. Write a program that prints the numbers from 1 to 100. For multiples of 3, print fizz. For multiples of 5, print buzz. If the number is a multiple of both 3 and 5, print FizzBuzz. For multiples of 5, print buzz. And for multiples of 3 and 5, print FizzBuzz. Okay, so for our examples, normally in like a school or an interview session, you probably have some examples, but if not, you would need to make your own. Oftentimes, one of the more difficult parts of solving the problem can be understanding the problem and coming up with reasonable examples, but we're just going to go with having some examples so far. So as you can see here, it's 1, 2, then it prints out the string fizz, goes to 4, prints out the string buzz, visits 5, and 6, 7. And if we had, well, it's 6, let's test it. Is 3 evenly divisible? Does 3 go into 6 in a whole number amount of times, basically, without any remainder? So the way you check that using the modulo, we have 6, modulo 3, 0. Oh, yep. So then this would need to be fizz. And then it would go all the way up, and then this fit. Did I just close my whole program? I don't think I did. I did. Again. This happened in the last video. All I did was click like right click and it just launched me out. This isn't that big of a deal because I'll be able to go back through and do this. I mean, normally I would do everything in like Sublime Text or something just in case stuff like this doesn't need to happen. But wow. All right, so let's see if I can recall everything that I just did. All right, so actually, let's do this. That's weird too that I just didn't really right click, it just threw me out, but oh well. All right, so I'm gonna do this pretty fast, so just 1 second. This would be a bummer to do during an interview. Like you're almost done solving a problem and bloop, you just erase everything that you have. All right, so our problem is print out the numbers from 1 to 100. If the number is evenly divisible by 3, print fizz for numbers evenly divisible by 5. Well, this should be multiples, even though that's the same definition, but the problem technically is this: if the number is a multiple of 3, print fizz for multiples of 5, print buzz. If the number is a multiple of both 3 and 5, print FizzBuzz. Okay. So we have that there. Paste that again down here. Eight, 9, 10, FizzBuzz, FizzBuzz. I should put in a timestamp for this so you don't have to watch all this. You can just get back to where it needs to be. FizzBuzz. Okay. Data structure, we're going to use an array. Okay. So I think I'm about where I was before I accidentally erased everything. This is twice in a video that I've done this. It's almost becoming a meme at this point, probably. All right, so print out the numbers from 1 to 100. If the number is a multiple of 3, print fizz. For multiples of 5, print buzz. If the number is a multiple of both 3 and 5, print FizzBuzz. So there's quite a few different little mini problems within a problem, and this is often the case in terms of programming problems. We're going to have to find a way to print out the numbers from 1 to 100, and then we're going to have to figure out how to implement whether or not it is a multiple. So that's going to be a little tricky. And then there's some stuff in terms of what's known as short circuiting that we have to be careful with in terms of validating whether or not a number is a multiple of a specific number, because if it determines that it is, it will exit out quickly. I think you'll know what I mean once I illustrate it, so let me not get ahead of myself. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and have an algorithm here. I'm probably going to use an array. So my algorithm is going to be high level. I'm just going to state what my problem is and what I'm going to do to arrive at a solution. So I'm just going to say that I'm going to print out the numbers from 1 to 100 and replace multiples of 3 with fizz, multiples of 5 with buzz, and multiples or in numbers that are multiples of both 3 and 5 with FizzBuzz. There's my algorithm, and then for a step-by-step implementation of that algorithm, I'm going to try to do the following. So I'm going to say print out the numbers from 1 to 100. And I'm not necessarily talking about how I'm going to do that. I'm just writing down the steps. Like think of your algorithm and your step-by-step implementation of it, almost like the breaking down of the problem into a bunch of little mini problems that makes it easier to solve. So we're going to print out the numbers from 1 to 100. Maybe we'll iterate over those numbers. Check each number to determine if it is a multiple of 3, 5, or both. Print fizz for 3. Maybe print or 4 isn't the best word because there is a for loop, but oh well. Print buzz. I'm gonna say when. When would be a better word. When 3, when 5. Print fizz buzz when both. Okay, so print out the numbers from 1 to 100. That's a problem in of itself. If you don't know Ruby syntax or syntax of the language that you're trying to learn, that can be pretty difficult just arriving at that particular problem. Same with iterating over the specific numbers. That can be kind of difficult too if you don't know how to do that. Then we're going to check each number to determine if it is a multiple of those specific numbers. Okay, so first things first, let's see if our thought process of printing out the numbers from 1 to 100 would be accurate. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do after I have my algorithm and my general approach, and the reason I leave the algorithm high level and then my steps kind of relatively high level but still a little more detailed, is that way if I'm trying to solve it or try to implement that algorithm and I come to the conclusion that I can't do it as I thought I could, I can go back and make some modifications and change things a little bit. So what I think I'm going to do is, like, if I want to print out the numbers from 1 to 100, Ruby lets me just make a range. So I can do like my range equals 1 dot dot to 100. And this dot dot here, that's a range. It means up to and including the last number. So I'm going to just double check that. And I like to work in IRB, basically the terminal, just to make sure that my current understanding of the logic and the syntax is correct. So I'm going to make a range called my range equals this. And then I'm going to just double check that. I mean, I know this is a range. So if I do like my range dot include 23, it should say true, which is true. But this range is not necessarily the most useful right now because I want it to be in a collection or in a fashion that I can iterate over it easily and access different compartments of that specific collection. So I'm going to turn this range into an array. So I'm going to say, so if I had like, all I had to do is say my range dot to a, and that makes a really long array. Now this isn't necessarily the most efficient or the most refactored solution, but I'm just trying to gear this towards more someone that's just learning programming. So now that I know that that works, I'm going to go ahead and write it over here. And I think I will go ahead and make this a method. I'll name it FizzBuzz, FizzBuzz, and I should be able to just output this. So I'll say numbers equals 1 up to 100 dot 2a, and just double check this again, make sure it's running. Oh, yeah, I have to actually output the method here, or call the method, I should say. All right, it's outputting everything. Okay. So what I like to do after I've accomplished a certain portion of the coding challenge or the algorithm or whatever you're working on, I like to just make a little mark to let me know that I've accomplished that portion of it. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change this little dash to a plus. All right, now I need to iterate over these numbers. So the way I iterate over numbers, iterate is just another word for looping, basically. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm just going to use the each method and then just output the number to show you how that works. So I'm going to say, got numbers right here. Let's do numbers. I'm going to do numbers dot each do number. Let's call it num. P num. All right. And this did output everything. Okay. So that is working. So I'm going to iterate over them, and then I'm going to check each number. So I'm going to do numbers dot each do num. And this goes into what I was saying before. If you don't account for something, it will short circuit, and I'll show you what I mean. So for this, I'm calling the each method. Each is a method in Ruby that allows you to loop over objects very cleanly. It's basically Ruby's equivalent of the for loop. So Ruby is designed from the ground up to be easy on the programmer. Think of it as like a luxury car. Some languages are designed for speed, for scalability, or whatever. Ruby is designed to be friendly to the programmer, make it easier for you to do your job. So that's what each does. And then we have do, the do end block. And during each iteration, this num parameter is reassigned to the current number. And so it's going to output that each element. That's a terrible definition, but it's good enough for this. So for each number in there for num, so I'm going to say if num modulo 3 equals 0, p fizz, and else if num modulo 5 equals 0, p buzz. And now let's just make sure that this is working. And well, this is an else if, so I only have 2 in there, so I should make this an else for now. So let me go ahead and do that. This is just accounting for 3 and 5. I haven't gotten to the multiples of both yet when I do it like this. So let's say we have this set up. All right, so let's see if this is working. Oh, I did something wrong here. Numbers.each do num. If the num modulo 3 equals 0, p fizz. Oh, why is it doing this? Yeah, this goes back to the whole thing in terms of what I was worried about before. All right, so let me just do this here. Numbers.each do num. Let's try if num modulo 3 equals 0, p num. All right, so that's working. So I'm probably going to need to do reassignment, which is what I should have counted for in my algorithm. So numbers.each do num if num modulo 3 equals 0, p fizz. Oh yeah, so I didn't fully flesh out my if statement. This is why this is all messed up. P fizz else p num. It's literally doing num. What did I? Yeah, it's because it's been a minute since I've done this problem, but you can see all of this is raw and uncut. So the reason why it's outputting the string num is because I told it to output the string num instead of the parameter num here. So let me try this again. Numbers.each do num if the num number is evenly divisible by 3. We're going to output fizz. else p num, not the string num, but the parameter. As you can see, it's starting to work here. All right, so this is working. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this is lined up on my code over here. So let's just kind of switch this up. Numbers that each do num. If num modulo 3 equals 0, p fizz. Else if num modulo 5 equals 0, let's do p buzz. And then we'll go ahead and add in the other portion about FizzBuzz, the last statement. Else, and this, yeah, so this is not going to work because it's going to get to the point, it's going to say, oh, okay, it's going to check. Let me just write this out. If num modulo 3 equals 0, and I'm going to do and. So when I use this and, it's going to check that the statement on the left-hand side of the and on the right-hand side of the and is true. And if it's true, then it's going to hopefully output my desired result. So if num modulo 3 equals 0 and num modulo 5 equals 0, p, oops. Yeah, this is in the wrong spot, so this is not going to work. This needs to be up top, but p FizzBuzz. I think it'll just be easier if I show you why it needs to be up top. So right now I'm just gonna make, oh my God. All from using a right click. What did I do? Why did it go back to this? Again, all I did, I swear, all I did was just right click. Now, what is happening when I'm right clicking now? Why is it not going back? Like, what is doing that? All right, so you saw the algorithm. You saw me doing a little bit of debugging. You've seen me erase my code twice. This is why you do not use everything in CoderPad for specifically doing this. The reason why I use CoderPad is because a lot of interviews and stuff are in it, but as of late, for whatever reason, I've been erasing everything that I've been doing and it's all gone. Normally you would write stuff in Sublime Text or, in another IDE to make sure that you got everything lined up. But I'm going to go ahead and just try to crank out FizzBuzz since it was almost done. And the reason that I needed to have FizzBuzz at the top is so that it would check both of those statements first. It would need to check if modulo 3 equals 0 and modulo 5 equals 0, then do this. Because if I put it towards the bottom, it would just check that first portion in the logic tree of the conditional statement, of the if statement, and then it would just exit out and not actually input FizzBuzz. But let's see if we can do this right. And you can see that this is not entirely lost. Let's see how we can do this here. All right, I'll try it over here. So we'll do numbers equals 1 up to 100 2a. Numbers dot each do num if num modulo 3 equals 0 and num modulo 5 equals 0. P FizzBuzz. Else if num modulo 3 equals 0, p fizz. Else if num modulo 5 equals 0, p buzz. Else p num. Let's see if this works. You'd think I would have learned my lesson by now for erasing all my code repeatedly. Looks like it worked. So we have 1, 2, 3, fizz, 4, 5, buzz, fizz, FizzBuzz, and then 15 is FizzBuzz. Then we go down to 30, FizzBuzz, good. 45, FizzBuzz, good. Yep, seems to work out. So one of the morals of today's story in terms of programming is make sure that you are not accidentally erasing all of your code. This is why you would probably want to back up a lot of your data and do all kinds of appropriate testing. I've managed to erase my code. I guess this would be the third time in a video. So there you go. But as you can see, in terms of the whole process of starting from the beginning, this isn't a lot of very complex code, but there is quite a bit going on in here in terms of understanding. So just knowing how to use an each statement. I mean, if you're using a different language, you would not have the equivalent. Well, some languages have an each, but it probably doesn't work the exact same way as it does in Ruby. And the reason why I had to do this statement first is because the first thing it checks is if it's a multiple of both of those numbers. If I put it towards the bottom, it would basically exit out before it got to the 5. So it would just check, oh, if num modulo 3 is 0, then it would just already validate that from a previous statement. I'm pretty sure that's correct. I could be wrong, but let me know in the comments if I got that wrong. Don't forget to smash that like button, hit the bell, and all that, cheesy stuff that people say. But thanks again for checking out my channel. I hope you found this moderately entertaining and at least a little bit of uh, educational or in terms of figuring out how to solve FizzBuzz. And before I close this video off, let me make sure that what I wrote over here is still working over there. So let's see. Because sometimes when you write in code, it's a little different than when you paste it. All right, cool. So yep, that seems to be good. Um, Feel free to check out my other videos. I post stuff about interesting stories around the world, history, archaeology. I have some more videos of me playing video games and some tabletop and stuff eventually. But I've just been so burnt out after like studying code all day that I haven't done that as much. But until next time, thanks a lot for checking this channel out and take care.